Hello and welcome to a special episode of the Ticket Manager All Access interview series. I'm your host, Jim Andrews. We decided to produce this special episode because it marks 1 year since we introduced the podcast series. And it's also the end of the calendar year, a time when everyone does their best ofs. Now, I can tell you it was pretty difficult to select a best of sample from this year's 34 outstanding guests. We could have gone for about an hour with this, but we wanted to keep it to a manageable time frame. So I want to start with 3 of our brand marketers who joined us, each of whom shared great insights into what, why, and how sponsorship achieves multiple objectives for their companies and how that role is changing over time.
The best brands, especially in our industry, are brands that are really built in culture and know how to play and win in culture. It's not forcing yourself into culture, but understand how to show up in the right area of culture. So whether that is sport, music, entertainment, who is seen drinking and enjoying your brand and where they're seen drinking it, all that sort of stuff, all that sort of matters and counts. So yeah, Game of Thrones, I think, was a really great partnership for us because it really allowed us to sort of work together with an amazing franchise, and it did a great job for Johnny Walker because it actually helped to put Johnny Walker into very relevant in terms of in culture. So therefore, if you flick that into sport, to your point, us being able to work with the NFL and leverage what is clearly a hugely powerful brand and a hugely powerful franchise is extremely important. And the reason you partner with them and you pay the sponsorship monies to people like the NFL is the ability to also have the NFL logo associated with your brand is extremely important. So we value that enormously. They've done a brilliant job of building that brand over the last 60 or so years and very hugely successfully, and we wanted to be a part of that because yes, we want to be part of their brand. There's a bit of borrowed equity, and the culture piece, there is a massive culture around football that we want to be part of. We absolutely look at what we can do to leverage a big partnership like that at multiple levels, from communication, so the advertising we want to do in and around games, the experiences we can do in stadia and around stadia, the work we can do with our retail partners in the on-premise and the off-premise, so in bars and retail, in liquor stores, or where we can do it, grocery stores, etc. All of that, you look at all of that and you kind of get into detail, you put KPIs around that, you add that up. Hopefully it also looks at, therefore, hopefully you can sell more because of this, so we put metrics around that. And then you look at engagement metrics. So, what are we going to do in terms of affinity? I mentioned earlier the reach piece. If you're the ability for us to just land a message with so many more consumers. So again, you'll put metrics around the ability to hit consumers, messaging, extend our, and ultimately that comes into brand equity. So the whole load of stuff. So yeah, around each of our partnerships, we have very clear metrics, which tend to be about reach, engagement, effectiveness of our programming, and ultimately, are we driving sales as well? So are we growing our net sales and ultimately our profitability as well? And obviously within all of that, we look at our mix and what we need to invest to do that, etc. So, how it fits into our overall P&L.
Back in the day, I think we were all concerned about the sign on the court or, the sign on the field. And I still want those things, but I really want to go much deeper. And so we have developed some guiding principles around partnerships that I think are really helpful for us as well as the partner. The first one's around that, when we come to the table, we want to work together to find a common goal. We want to solve for something big. We also want to look at utilizing each other's unique abilities and services. So how do we really tap into that? Kind of a little different approach, I think, than sometimes others think about. We also say there's 5 things. So the third one is we want to forge a deeper relationship. We really want to innovate. We want to accelerate change, and we want to do it faster. But ultimately, this leads to really inspiring. So inspiring the communities where our partnerships live, and even bigger than that. And then lastly, 4 and 5 are really uniting together to make a difference. Again, as a not-for-profit, I think that's core to who we are. And partnerships are a great way to do that. And then lastly, we don't always believe that it has to be monetary. So we believe in extending beyond, financial support. What can we do to really engage the community in different ways?
And when we relaunched our brand and really built our brand in 2015, it was built on the back of partnerships, right? And I think we built this brand based on partnerships. For us, it's, we are category exclusive. So it is what differentiates us from other healthcare systems. So every healthcare system can buy radio, they can buy digital ads, they can buy out of home, they can buy TV spots, but none of them can activate and partner around these marks. You know, the way I like to see it is all partnership contracts are just contracts to get you through the finish line. Once they're done, rip them up, throw them away, and then really foster a relationship. And you should be activating your business with these sponsorships or these sponsors based on what's happening in the marketplace, right? And, you know, that's a unique thing that if you're following the letter of the law on these agreements, it's not always going to get you the best results, right? I think you're going to have flexibility and work with your partners on being flexible to be able to navigate, you know, changing dynamics in the competitive landscape that you're in.
How are rights holders meeting the needs of sponsors like the ones we just heard from? Well, next we will listen to senior leaders at 3 sports organizations on the moves they are all making to identify, secure, and retain partners.
Having sat on the other side, you know, on the brand side, is that we've gotten really good at listening, which I think has always been a problem with, you know, a lot of teams and leagues when they come in to sell a brand is, you know, they kind of know the assets they have to sell and they try and like, you know, cram them into a partnership because they have so many minutes of LED time and they have whatever. So what we've done, at least from a change standpoint, is we go in and do an introductory meeting of like, this is what we expect out of the franchise. This is who we are. This is what we stand for. And we don't sell them anything. We basically sell us and the dream and the belief. And then we ask them, like, you know, what is it that you're looking to do in the marketplace? Or what is it you're looking to do for the summertime, which is, you know, the one key piece, and listen. And then we bring back a proposal because we're going in that we don't know any of these partners because we truly don't. And we're not taking it for granted. The ones we have on the Panthers side, that their objectives in the summertime or in the spring are the same as the ones they have in the fall with the Panthers. So it's been really good. And we've had a lot of really positive reception to that strategy, because I can tell you from having been on the other side, I only had that happen like 5 times out of like the 6 or 7 years I was there.
Are you establishing your KPIs out the gate with a partner on this is what everybody's going to base success on? These are the performance metrics that we're going to use to evaluate if this program is working or not.
Yeah.
And now more than ever, we as the property need to be flexible with partners as their business changes. And, you know, how do the KPIs change, right? And so, you know, we're going to just have to be more adaptable and flexible to changing things out throughout the year and trying new things together. You know, ultimately, I believe if you show that flexibility, that adaptability, that you're going to work with a partner, you know, you're going to have a much better opportunity for a long-term partnership than just, you know, say, hey, we got to stay within, you know, these guardrails because that's what we agreed to from day one. We have to understand kind of going forward in the business climate that we're in, people's businesses are changing daily, right? And so their marketing has to, you know, is a function of that. It is constantly being reevaluated. The objectives are going to change. The objectives change, the KPIs change, right? And how we deliver those KPIs, the different assets and things like that are naturally going to change as well.
We are always looking at the usual verticals or industries, your beverage partners, your auto partners, your airline partner, the financial services and banks. But you also have to be looking at emerging brands, things like the Postmates, the DoorDashes of the world, you know, Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies, the DraftKings, FanDuel, gaming is coming, esports. And it's interesting that with a lot of these non-traditional brands, or like Nectar Sleep, who's a new great partner of ours, I think what we're seeing is that brands, everybody's measuring everything now.
Right.
And it's no longer a relationship of, hey, I hung a sign for you, wasn't that great? And I'm pretty sure that that drove business for you. It must have. It was a big sign and it was beautiful. So, and now especially with online advertising and social media platforms and, you know, curated partner content that we create together and we push out on our channels and they repurpose on their channels. And, you know, the ability to put out email blasts to either our ticket holder base or our broader mailing list and have the opportunity for the recipients to click through and learn something about Nectar or Postmates, you can measure all of that. And so I think we're finding that what's really resonating with brands is that they want to engage with our fan base.
Social responsibility is playing an increasingly critical role in the business of sports. When it comes to partnerships, just listen to the evolution in objectives that is taking place at two major North American sponsors.
I believe in long-term partnerships, right? Like, I think that if you are trying to exact some level of consumer sentiment or exact some level of business result, it's not going to happen overnight in the sponsorship world. You know, we've all been doing this a long time. I think it takes years and years and years to really build that equity and to really build that comfort level to understand what we're trying to do as partners. Going back to the original question, there's certainly a risk of becoming complacent or just, you know, falling back on what works. We need to push the envelope. I think we need to be allowed to fail is the wrong word. We need to be allowed to make a misstep or two, right? So we might try something, and if it doesn't work, that's okay. And if it does work, then let's double down on it and make it better and better and better. So I do think we have that flexibility. Obviously, you know, a misstep is nothing that's going to hurt the brand. It just may be a direction or an activation or an execution strategy that didn't hit the mark. I would also say that it's important to keep our own strategy sharp and fresh. And we've evolved. I mean, over the last 5 years, our strategy has evolved considerably from where I would say it was really centered on the customer. So making our BMO customer feel special. We called it the BMO effect. And if you weren't our customer, how could our sponsorship presence and activation sort of say, hey, I wish I was a BMO customer? And we had all kinds of activations that led or proved that out. I would say over the last couple of years, we've really shifted towards being not only a purpose-driven organization. So I know that you're probably hearing that a lot these days. What is a purpose-driven organization? BMO's purpose is to boldly grow the good in business and in life. And it really talks to a business of our size and our impact owes it to not just our customers, but owes it to communities to make a difference. And we're shifting our partnerships to make sure that we're making that difference. So, you know, whether it's minority-owned businesses in the US or communities in need, underserved communities in need in Canada, we are using our partnerships to exact change and using our partners to help deliver that. So we can only do so much as a bank. Banking, I know I'm not letting you in on some great industry secret here. Banking isn't terribly sexy, right? But when a bank and a basketball team or a bank and a Major League Soccer team can get together and build programs and use assets like players and social media and put them all together to do some exciting and socially impactful things, that's kind of where the bullseye is these days for us. We're not totally departing away from some of those real sort of revenue driving, sentiment driving, opinion driving activations that we proved out through the BMO effect. Like, we still care so deeply about our customers and you want to add to their experience in consuming, whether it's the team or whether it's the event. We're still always going to have those activation points as the core of what we're trying to do. But rather than a shift, I'd say it's an evolution. So we're taking some of that sort of very surface, top of the funnel activation stuff, and we're moving it towards a greater good.
United doesn't necessarily look for sponsorships to help build brand awareness.
Sure.
The brand awareness, one, is already there. The brand awareness, two, can be achieved through far less costly means, including digital advertising.
Right.
Right. So that's just one of many ways where I would urge a seller who's approaching an airline, when you say, hey, we've got this great fan base and we can put your brand in front of that fan base. Okay, but there are online travel agencies and there are, social media networks that can also put us in front of that fan base for pennies on the dollar. So what is the next thing that we can do to actually encourage that fan base to want to do business with my airline versus another? Adding inclusive partnerships into our sponsorship function was largely about sort of codifying and formalizing an approach that looks at sponsorship beyond simply the traditional brand property relationship. You know, what can we be doing to impact communities and community development, business development, diversity and inclusion, that sort of thing, right? There are so many different ways in which we as sponsorship professionals bring value to United and bring value to the properties we sponsor. And we look at inclusive partnerships as how do we take some of those same elements, those same learnings, those same skill sets in the sponsorships team at United and try to expand how we look at sponsorships and partnerships to achieve many of the same goals. And this is sort of, it shows up, not will, it does, it shows up in sort of how we activate and who we partner with and how we do those partnerships and how we execute on those partnerships.
And of course, many of our teams have taken a prominent public stand on issues of social justice, as our next guest discussed.
Sport has always been able to be this melting pot of people, of backgrounds, of race, of gender, of age. Doesn't matter, but if you are a fan of a sports team, it becomes a very, very, I'll call it almost opaque experience because you want to root for the Cleveland Cavaliers, or you want to root for your favorite NBA team or NFL team or whatever the case may be is. And so let's use that power to unite to create positive change. And so we were one of the first teams in the league and cities actually in the league to form a 3-team alliance between ourselves, the Cleveland Browns, and the Cleveland Indians. It's something we're very proud of. It's something that's focused. The major tentpoles are on education, police reform, and voting, because it was very timely this year given the election. And that's going to be something we're going to continue to build on with the other teams here in Northeast Ohio. But as an organization, we feel it's our point in time to once again educate, drive equality, and ultimately lift up humanity. And I think if we can really focus on those things, and people can let the divisiveness of the different narratives that are out there right now and really focus on the movement, that's where we're going to see a lot of incredible impact and a lot of incredible change.
For sports teams, leagues, and events, the past year was filled with new projects, assets, and developments, all with a singular aim: growth. Our next 3 clips share different perspectives on the idea of where growth will come from.
I would say that our traditional assets, such as signage, TV, radio, digital, they all drive tremendous value. But I think, as our industry evolves, as being in the industry as long as I have, our partners are asking for more, that true ROI, that ROO, as I like to call it, a return on an objective. We're being challenged by our partners to sort of jump into so many different areas outside of what I would call traditional sponsor assets. So everything from sustainability platforms, digital fan engagement through our app, community and social justice platforms, paid social, segmentation of fans. Like, there's so many different elements that are out there.
When you're so close to this business, you realize traditional revenue triggers don't have much growth opportunity. There's only so much you can raise ticket prices. There's only so much, inventory and leveraging traditional sponsorship. You've got to think of, you're not going to grow selling tickets and hot dogs, as I'm reminded by our owners, very quickly. But what is the opportunity? You build infrastructures that are billions of dollars in arenas and stadiums. How do you activate those, beyond your core business of an NBA team or, a Major League Baseball team, I think. And then how do you build kind of the monetization model around it to really think about, you've got your centerpiece of an arena or stadium, and then how do you aggregate, all of the other pieces to monetize around that?
This is not an industry where we have been elite marketers by today's standards. We're good brand marketers, actually extraordinary brand marketers, but we haven't been growth marketers. And so I've begun to see a shift where we put more resources towards content and data and we began to build our own D2C models and machines. So that's what you'll see, and that'll shift all kinds of revenue streams. The other part that's kind of interesting to think about is your traditional sponsorship bucket and your content sponsorship bucket. Those are somewhat collapsing and then being pulled apart because we are selling differently. We're kind of maxing out what of the traditional sponsorship elements are.
Exactly.
And it's about how can we create platforms to drive change, and a lot of those are driven by media and social media platforms. We have a very traditional view, and in many ways we're stuck in cement, or walking uphill dragging a piano. And we have to, in this business, get out of our own way, and we have to understand what the trends are, how people consume media, why they're interested and why they're not interested, and then reallocate our resources so that we can continue to grow the next generations of these business. Or we're going to be like my black and white photos, and we're going to be boxing and horse racing. I don't want to be boxing or horse racing. By the way, I love boxing and horse racing. That's a whole nother story for another day. Maybe that dates me better than anything else. But I do truly believe that live content will hold the keys to whatever kingdom we want to open. But if we think we can show it the same, or do it the same, or be the same, or act the same, or sell the same, or present the same, we got another thing coming. So I think, it's like, I looked in the mirror and the problem is me. I think we, the industry, have this opportunity to reimagine and recreate and rediscover what it means to capture that new generation. That's different, and you've seen the NBA and the NHL, you've seen them get into like esports a little bit. You've seen them get heavy on TikTok and some of these other newer platforms. So we're towing the water.
Stepping back from the big picture, podcast guests this year offered a great deal of practical advice and shared behind the scenes looks at how they make decisions and go to market. Here are just two examples of guests who offered tangible, useful information for all of our listeners.
I always like to approach a negotiation with, I start with a few buckets. There's the must-have bucket. These are elements of the deal that are very important to us, and we absolutely want to have included. And then I break my wish list bucket into two. It's the big wish list, like, would love to have that, but long shot in getting it done. And then there's another bucket where it's a wish list that's somewhat reasonable, and I believe that I'll be able to integrate that into the deal. And so I always begin with a conversation with the partner, and to sit down and really understand, because the partner has some initiatives that it's in their must-have bucket as well. Especially if you're talking about category exclusivity, you're usually talking about something where the rights holder says, okay, if you want category exclusivity, then here are the things that I have to have included as part of that. So I like to begin where we come together and understand each other. And that's always a good place to start, because then from there, it can only get better. From there, it won't have the potential to go south. So I like to start there. I like to start with what are our must-haves on both sides? Let's come together and put that in play. And then I always I like to start off the opportunity with having the partner present to me, sort of after I talk about my initiatives and my priorities. I like to give them the opportunity to present and pitch some concepts around that, the add-ons, so to speak. And the reason why I do that is to a couple of reasons. Number one, I like to see how they translate my priorities and needs into reality, because that tells me whether or not they're actually listening, and if they are listening, how they translate sort of my needs. It usually sets the stage for the relationship going forward, because if they can't process that up front, it's going to be a difficult next few years in the relationship. Because as we know, you start with a deal, but then it's not perfect, and you need to have wiggle room to be able to, massage it over time to fit both parties and really maximize its value.
The thing that we try to do and really focus on is ultimately, how is it going to deliver on our brand goals? And not just from a national perspective, but truly from a local perspective. So it is a local business when you get down to it, whether you're talking about beer, wine, or spirits. It's ultimately like what's relevant for that consumer in that marketplace, and what's going to differentiate your brands amongst the competition there. When you look at what we're doing in LA, Modelo's the number one beer out there. From a dollar share perspective, it's bigger than Miller Lite, Coors Light, and Bud Light combined.
Wow.
So yeah, we have a very different perspective about how we take Modelo to market there versus in New York, where Corona's still king. It's the number one dollar share brand. So very different dynamics of things that we have to manage, but still having the national priorities that we need to deliver from the Modelo side and the Corona side. So we once we get down to that selection of opportunities, it's about what are the key markets and what do we need to accomplish in those markets? What are the local objectives? And again, like I said, the portfolio strengths differ based on geography. So what are we trying to accomplish in that particular market? You know, where's our brand development index? Where are we from a velocity standpoint? What's our distribution rates there? So looking at the business at the local level and saying like, what are the gaps that we need to fill? And how do those opportunities help us fill those? Whether it's building brand awareness, whether it's giving us something that we can take to large format grocery store, liquor store on premise, is it sampling? So it's really taking apart the business at the local level and saying like, how do these partnerships help fill in those gaps to deliver against those business objectives?
If the real estate business is all about location, 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 then in our business, it's the fans, the fans, the fans. Next up, 3 forward-looking C-level team executives discuss the keys to forging stronger connections with and earning greater value from fans. Here's a hint. It has a lot to do with data.
We had to invest in some people that can truly look at the different segments of the databases, understand behaviorally how they act, understand demographically how they look, and then start to create customized campaigns for those folks. So we've been working and investing in some software with a partnership we have with a company out of India to try to create a marketing automation experience in the ticket world. And we're one industry that's a little bit behind some other industries like maybe a Netflix or an Amazon, and to what the buying experience would be like for those customers. You know, so if you logged into jaguars.com to search for tickets and I logged into jaguars.com to search for tickets, we would have the exact same experience right now. What we're working on is something maybe a little more like the Netflix model, whereas when you log into Netflix, what you will see and the information that will be fed to you is very different than the information that will be fed to me. And for us in the world of conversion, that's what's so important. When someone consumes our content, they look at a great video, they go to our website to maybe think about coming here live and experience it. If I can't have a seamless and personalized experience for them, I'm going to be a little bit lower on my conversion for those folks. So what we're working on now with our people is really customizing what they see and what they experience as they're going through our buying process.
It really is all about the fans. You know, they are the engine that drives this machine. And, you know, once you kind of get that, you take things into a different perspective and you start looking at things in a different way. And, you know, for us, understanding who our fans were really started out so we could help improve our renewal numbers. It's no secret, you know, it's always easier to retain a customer than it is to find one, right? That's sales 101. So we started building out these retention models based off of very specific data points that would help us make a decision and ultimately help us renew at a higher rate. Some of these data points were, you know, how often they were coming to games and when they were coming to games and who they were affording their tickets to. I think we used some of that to build out some of these early models. And a lot of those decisions that we got from those data points really revolved around how we would price our tickets the following year. And I think over the last few years, at least, we've really started to look at it differently to where it wasn't solely just around our tickets. You know, before we would set our price at X because we knew the fan or a fan would buy that ticket. We started really asking ourselves, is this the best way to maximize revenue? And it probably was the best way to maximize ticket revenue, but was this the best way to maximize revenue for the organization? Right. And, you know, we started looking at what the true value of our fans and our customers and our members were. You know, what were they spending at the concession stands? what additional tickets they were buying outside of their season ticket membership, whether that be group tickets or single game tickets or even arena shows, or what they're spending in the box, I mean, at the fan shop or on e-commerce. And we would look at that individual and start gathering that information and look at it in totality, and then step back from the table and start asking ourselves, hey, that 2% increase that we were gonna put on that ticket, yeah, we could probably make that up. But can we make up all the other revenue streams that this one customer is bringing in?
And DC as a whole has a lot of international visitors on an annual basis. So we integrated into Capital One Arena Alipay. So we actually were the first US arena to accept Alipay. We did it, in ticketing, we did it in food and beverage. We also did it on the retail side of our business. And then as we were having conversations with them, we have all these incredible data points. We work with a lot of partners out there, and, we've got a data warehouse. So every interaction that one of our clients has, we actually capture that data. And as we were having conversations with, the Alibaba Group and Alibaba Cloud, one of the things that we wanted them to do was really to build out this segmentation opportunity that would allow us to better communicate to our customers, to make sure that when we're communicating to them, we're delivering, a message that really is 100% focused on what their interests are. And that was what, Alibaba and the fan segmentation program allowed us to do. And what we've seen, in the first year is, higher conversion rates on customers. We saw, potentially higher revenues that we're able to generate, more tickets that we were able to sell. And it also helped us on the food and beverage side. So, we're still in year 2 of it, and we're going to do some enhancements that we started, this past summer. But, we think from a business intelligence standpoint, it's really a game changer, for us in terms of the way we're communicating to our partners and customers.
Finally, a perennial topic for brands and properties is how to determine what's working and what's not. A few of our guests this year had some eye-opening things to say about measuring sponsorship's impact, and gave us a positive note to end on as they shared some of the great returns they are earning.
Every brand is different. Some brands are coming into sports for the first time, and maybe they just need a lot of ideation of how they want to bring their brand to life. Some others are more sophisticated, probably have agencies behind them, really have a thought as how they want to activate. And then it just comes down to, are you doing what they ultimately have signed up for, right? And how often are you frequently communicating with them? Measurement is the hot topic, right? And I think that it comes alongside of, there's a lot of inventory a brand could buy. You could buy it at the national level, you could buy it at the local level, you could buy it at the local media level that's sort of tied to the team. And so there's a lot of decision trees that a brand would need to make around, where do I want to spend my money? How do I spend it? And truth of the matter is, what eyeballs are being delivered to me, and how sticky are those eyeballs if I'm correlated with this rights and marks property. And I think measurement will continue to evolve, and we've seen it, right? There was the linear measurement that we all knew of Nielsen and company as it relates to broadcast television. Then there became the social and digital measurements, and, not to give too many companies away around who do this. And I think even that to a degree is changing and evolving over time. And, where you would be able to in the past do a recap and say, okay, here was the money I spent, here was my assets, here's the rate card I spent for it. Did the team deliver on these assets? And did it, match the impressions that I thought were going to be there? That's definitely one way it is the way we do the recaps. I think that will continue on, but how much further we go outside of these are just the eyeballs or impressions are going to be really, really important.
People who manage sponsorships have always bucketed sponsorships as a brand, a long-term brand investment, and that there's no way to see real-time feedback or get real-time results. And if you're in it for a sponsorship, you're in it for the 3 to 5 years before you're going to see an impact. And that creates some air cover for sponsors to not have to drive the business. It gives them a little bit of space. And so I think a lot of sponsorships and people who have led those have just benefited from that belief. I don't have that belief. I believe that brand marketing can drive performance, and I believe that performance marketing can build brands. And I think that holding them accountable for both is important to make sure that you're really not doing anything that's going to impact your brand negatively, but still achieving business objectives. And so with sponsorships now, especially with social, sponsorships are active, they're social, they're trackable. You see the conversations happening in real time. And so there's a lot more accountability that we can put on them. Our sponsorship leader is a very business results oriented person. And so she's been really embracing these new goals. And the Russell Wilson promotion actually helps show that a sponsorship can drive real meaningful business impact. And so we're going to start holding each of our sponsorship partners accountable for revenue. We're going to give them a target of revenue that we want to see driven directly from initiatives for that sponsorship. And we'll start having those conversations on a regular basis so they can see whether or not they're having true impact on our business. Like, it can't just be media reach. You know, a third party telling us how many impressions we're getting from a sign is not helping our business. And so there's new accountability that we're able to hold. And most of our partners, when we've had these conversations, have embraced it and they're excited to help us.
We look at the assets, we look at the engagement, we look at the activations, we look at the value we get from those things and assign a dollar amount to it. We look at lead generation, and then based on the lead generation, we make some assumptions in terms of conversion of those leads to an actual patient. And then we look at the lifetime value of a patient and assign a value, and I'll make it up, right? So we look at that and say, all of that is worth $100,000. And we are spending, again, I'll make it up, $150,000 on a relationship. So that means that we are under delivering to what we're spending. So that allows us then to either renegotiate some of the assets that we have, or rethink how we like to activate. I usually like to see 2-to-1, 3-to-1 return on investment, right? So for that $100,000 spend, I'd like to see, $200,000 to $300,000 in return, but that isn't always possible. And when those situations happen, we sit down with our partners and have a discussion in terms of how do we retweak things to get more value out of the money we spend.
When I first joined the firm, we were up on a renewal. And we had just finished a number of years, our initial years as a sponsor. And the question was, should we continue to do this? Because it's no small investment. Anytime you think about putting your name as a title sponsor on an event, it's fairly significant. And the question I ask is, well, why do we do it? I was new to the organization, really wanted to understand why. Because what I was struggling with is a brand exposure event. It's a really expensive way to get your brand out there, particularly when you look at the reach of the PGA Tour and how much of that audience would actually be buyers of what we do. We went back and looked at every client who had attended the event. And what I asked the team to do was evaluate the revenue growth from those clients. What were we seeing prior to them attending? What were we seeing after? Did that trend line change? How were we balancing repeat attendees versus new attendees? And what we found was that the growth rate, compounded annual growth rate on revenue of a client, was 2x if they had attended the Classic. Now, that doesn't mean because they came to the golf tournament, right? All of a sudden we generated that revenue. I'd love to say that, and the board would laugh at me. But what it said is we're getting the right clients there, we're creating the right experiences, we're deepening our relationships, and that is evolving our first choice advisor and our power being understood position, which is then driving revenue through the firm. So for me, with the Classic, it was incredible because we flipped it on its head and said, brand is the added benefit. This is really about deepening relationships with our clients. We can show a measurable return on it. And oh, by the way, then how do we apply that to some of our other sponsorships?
I hope that you enjoyed those highlights and that you will join us for more great podcast interviews in the coming year. From everyone at Ticket Manager, thank you so much for watching and listening. Cheers.